Karen, hi again.
Hi.
We met once before and we talked about your fear of loss and how it connects to your fear of commitment. At this time in your life, I asked you to monitor some thoughts you might have had around specific incidents in your relationship and write down those thoughts when you felt a sense of dread about the current relationship with John, your partner. What have you noticed this week?
I did try to think about my thoughts, and one example I was remembering as I was driving over here was when John made reference to the fact that I don't clean out the refrigerator, that I don't, worry about that as something that I need to do. And I remember thinking the feelings that came up were like, see, I'm not good at everything. I don't do the refrigerator, things like that. He's not gonna like. It's gonna negatively affect the relationship. And I mean, it just led from one thing to another. And that feeling came back, that the relationship will somehow end. It just kind of all builds together.
How likely is that to be true?
Well, based on just the refrigerator incident, probably not very likely. And I know that, but somehow those little things just build up, and that fear feeling comes up when they happen.
You generalize from before.
Yes.
You've lost a father when you were very young and a little brother when you were quite young. And you talked last week about a stepfather when you were an adolescent and then your older brother in your life. And so those are genuine losses that have happened to you. But what's different about this relationship?
Where I get confused because I know that this relationship is different, but the feelings of loss that come up just remind me that I don't want to have to experience that again. So I know it's different, but I don't want to experience loss again.
You're afraid of feeling that pain again. You're saying to yourself on some deep level, every time I get close, I'll experience loss. Every time there's a problem, things will end. Is it true that every time there's a problem, you will experience loss?
Well, not every time. I mean, he could die, but not every time, no.
Right, relationships do end, but not every time that there's a minor problem. You are generalizing, and that's one word that you can use. Overgeneralizing from the past, and another word that maybe you can remember is catastrophizing from those situations as if they're the same as the current one. Do you see how you're doing this?
Yes. Because every time there's that little problem, I get that pain. So, yeah.
So that pain's a cue for you, and you then start worrying. The pain comes from deeply embedded, now maladaptive thoughts that really maybe were effective at the time but aren't anymore. There's a word for that called a cognitive schema or cognitive floor plan that you're operating from as for I can't speak.
Start over?
Yeah. So that pain's a cue for you, and then you start worrying. The pain comes from deeply embedded, now maladaptive thoughts that really maybe were effective at the time but aren't anymore. There's a word for that called a cognitive schema or a cognitive floor plan that you're operating from as if it's true. Now, what was true then? You're saying to yourself, if there's any problem, then a relationship is going to end.
Yes. Because every time there's that little problem, I get that pain. So, yeah.
So that pain's a cue for you, and then you start worrying. The pain comes from deeply embedded, now maladaptive thoughts that really maybe were effective at the time but aren't anymore. There's a word for that called a cognitive schema or a cognitive floor plan that you're operating from as if it's true. Now, what was true then? You're saying to yourself, if there's any problem, then a relationship is going to end. It's so embedded that you don't catch the thoughts in the present, as if they're different now, but you still can come back to them. With new, more adaptive thoughts, not maladaptive thoughts, but now generalizing like you're doing or catastrophizing, what type of thoughts do you think that you can have now?
Well, I guess when that feeling comes up, I know that I can say, that this relationship is different and that we can talk about things. And I know that John's not going to leave me. I feel very confident about that. Like I said, other than if he dies, and he's willing to work with me, so I know I can. I have to just say those things.
Good, then let's work on what I'll call a homework assignment. Is that okay with you?
Yes, I will work on it.
What situation with John might bring up these thoughts?
It will probably be some complaint about the dog.
And what will you say to him, to yourself?
I will try to remember and say, we can talk about this. He's not going to leave, and just because we have a disagreement over the dog doesn't mean that it's going to lead to a loss.
You're reminding yourself not to catastrophize. Great, you're reminding yourself not to catastrophize, that this relationship is different from all those other experiences in the past. And one thing I think it's important to remember is, how long did it take to develop this fear of loss, this floor plan?
Well, my dad died when I was 3, so my whole lifetime.
So it's going to take some hard work to combat these embedded, we'll call them thoughts, your cognitive floor plan. It's going to have to change slowly.
Right, I see. I'm really going to have to work on this.
I have a suggestion. I'd like you to write down every incident that brings up those thoughts, and then how you've combated each incident with the new thoughts that we've talked about today. Is that something you think you can do?
Yes, I can do that.
Great, I look forward to seeing how you do it.
Thank you. It's going to take a lot of work.